Previously on Your New Jersey. Where did the idea of public office come about?
So when I came home from Seton Hall University with my MBA CPA to Raritan, the mayor of the town, Anthony DeSico, was a friend of my parents, their generation, and I'll never forget, he came over to the house one day and he said, "Jack, your family's been here for 100 years. You've all owned businesses in this town. MBA, CPA, we could use that kind of expertise. You ought to run for council in town." And I've always been a curious sort, and I said, my goodness, the town my grandfather immigrated to, what an honor this would be for my family. So I did it. That's how it happened.
And you just caught the bug. You just love the rush.
Well, you know what I say when people say to me, "What are you doing in politics?" It's if you genuinely like and care about people, this is the greatest business in the world. If you genuinely like problem solving, which I do, I'm a CEO. I love problem solving. This is the greatest business in the world. And the third thing I'll say is when something I love is broken, I'm determined to fix it, no matter what it might be. And right now, New Jersey's broken. It can be fixed. Leadership matters. So that's what this campaign is all about.
Yeah. How do you block out the naysayers, the negativity, the people, smack talking you? I mean, you're human. That has to affect you.
We're all human, but you realize you're never going to get 100% of the vote. What I always do is listen, because that dignifies and acknowledges the respect of the other person who opposes you. It's not a pretty business. When it's played by indecent people, it can get downright ugly. But I just always focus on the positive aspect of this.
Hello and welcome to Your New Jersey. I'm Lisa Marie Falbo. On today's show, we meet Democratic candidate for New Jersey Governor, Mikie Sherrill. I interviewed her in one of her favorite Garden State towns to get to know her better as a person and to share with voters the experiences that shaped her path into public service. We are sitting in Morristown, New Jersey, a city that's near and dear to your heart. Why did you pick Morristown here today?
Well, this is the heart of my district, the 11th District of New Jersey. It's also, we're not too far down the road. NJ 11 for Change started having Fridays with Frelinghuysen. That's where his office was, which kind of kicked off, I think, that 2018 congressional race years ago.
And by the way, you have a knack for being in the coolest cities because Morristown is in the heart of your district, but you call Montclair home.
Yeah, in fact, it's funny, there are a lot of similarities. They're two fantastic towns. So I have been really lucky to have such a great district.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start from the beginning. When did you come to New Jersey and fall in love with the Garden State?
So I was living in Manhattan. I had worked in the Navy and then gotten out, and my husband had gotten a job. And so we moved there and decided after I, was pregnant with our third that we wanted to move out of the city, and then really looked at a lot of different places, but fell in love with Montclair.
Well, they call that the sixth borough.
Yeah, it felt well, and it's funny because when we first moved there, somebody said to me, "Are you from the Upper West or Brooklyn?" Because in Montclair was evidently only those two places.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I was like, "Oh, Upper West."
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
So talk about maintaining roots there with your 4 children now.
Yeah, so it has been wonderful. I think New Jersey is the best place in the country to raise a family. And so many people feel the same way because, as you know, I've been running this primary election and now the general election, so going up and down the state and speaking to thousands of people. And that's the thing that comes up most, is how much people want to stay here. They either want to raise their family here, or if they're grandparents, they want to watch their grandchildren grow here. And in every stage of life, it's becoming harder and harder for people to afford that.
Absolutely. So back up a bit, though, before your New York days and your Jersey days, your Navy days, because that's just so interesting to me. How did you decide to enlist?
Well, from the time I was a little girl, I told my dad I wanted to fly. And he said, "Well, that's too expensive. You're going to have to go into the military if you want to learn how to fly." And I always caution parents. I don't think my dad was paying much attention to this conversation. And so I caution parents, be careful what you say, even to your, youngest children. So this was in about the 5th grade. And I said, "Oh, okay, well, I'll go to the Naval Academy." And he said, "I don't know if the Naval Academy takes women. And I don't know if the Navy has women pilots." And I have to tell you, I remember having no qualms whatsoever that I could make sure I did that, because the way I was brought up, and I think so many people were brought up here in this country is that you could fulfill your dreams. You could fulfill your American dream. If you worked hard and fought hard, you could make those opportunities. And sure enough, by the time I graduated from the Naval Academy, I graduated with the first class of women eligible for combat in ships and aircraft.
So before that time, women weren't eligible.
They were flying, but they weren't eligible for combat roles.
So did you fly in combat?
No, I flew helicopters. I flew on ships, and I didn't fly in ground combat. I flew on ships. So in the Persian Gulf and during Kosovo, I was stationed out of Italy. The thing I love so much about my service in the Navy is how different that experience was and how much it opened up the world to me. So not only was I serving with people from every state in the nation, some who had lived overseas with parents who were service members themselves, but then I also had the opportunity to serve all across the world, in Europe, in the Middle East, and to see firsthand what a difference it makes to be in a country where you have opportunity, where it's not about who you know, or whether you're born into wealth or poverty, but that you can make something of yourself. That has not been obtainable in so many parts of the world, and that's what I worry so much about here right now in our country.
How many years did you spend overseas?
So I served after I graduated from the Naval Academy, which was a 4-year institution. Then I went on to serve almost 10 years. And I served in both Norfolk, Virginia for probably about 5 of those years. But even at that time, I would do deployments back and forth as well.
That's just so inspiring. Wow. You're talking to someone with a very bad fear of flying. So the fact that you're flying helicopters all over the world, like landing on ocean line, I mean, that's just another level. What do you say to people like myself that have that fear, especially right now? You hear about aviation accidents like every day at this point.
Well, I don't usually go. So I love flying. I've always loved flying. I think it's really safe, but I also I don't want to compare it to, say, driving your car, because then I don't want to give you a phobia of driving either. But I do. Flying, even from the time I was really young, just going on a commercial flight, it was just this sense of adventure, just taking off. I always loved taking off, even to this day, and I fly all the time. Just taking off is a great feeling. You're just going to be somewhere new in almost no time at all. It still inspires me.
Well, I like the landing.
Yeah.
I'm the person that starts the clapping at the end. Thank God. But moving on. So every time we've connected, I always am in awe how you manage to balance all of this with your family. 4 kids, a husband. When did the marriage and the kids happen? While you were still in service or after?
No, my husband and I were dating when we were both still in the Navy, but we didn't get married until after we'd both gotten out, and we didn't have children until after we'd both gotten out. And so I have so much respect, a really deep respect for people who are in the military and raise their families, because it can be challenging. And that's why I've always fought so hard for things like being able to transfer your licensing, for example, so that if you get, if you're licensed as a nurse in one state, you can move that to another state, because we know how hard it is for military families to do stuff like that. And so we always say in the military that when one person serves, everyone serves. And so any attack on military families or children, their education, their reproductive rights, is really offensive to me, and something I've fought hard to protect against.
Yeah, you don't think about things like that, like the licensing.
And so many spouses who have had these types of certifications or professional degrees end up not being able to work if they aren't able to port those credits, because they just, the moving so often, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah. So tell us about your family, your 4 kids.
They're fantastic. My oldest is 19 and my youngest is 13. And it has just been a real joy to watch them grow, but it's also been incredibly challenging in many different ways. And I would say what is different from maybe previous generations is social media.
Oh, yes. And we've talked about that.
We've talked about it.
It's a nightmare.
It is a nightmare. And I think everything sort of became worse during COVID, when our children's whole lives in many cases were online as they were doing school and communicating with friends and trying to combat isolation. And yet now, at a time when maybe being online seemed like we were lucky they were able to do that to keep them safe, now it has actually done huge damage, I think. And we're seeing real mental health problems. And the longer kids spend online, the worse it is. I was just seeing some studies that now children spend more time indoors than prison inmates, that 17-year-olds have as many social interactions as 70-year-olds. And we know that a lot of times our kids will be in school, and if they're not in a structured activity, they're by themselves online. And it's really been damaging for them.
How does Mikie, the mom, curtail that at home?
It's really hard. Like every parent, I feel like I'm constantly struggling. And I know that I'm successful when my kids are either out biking, or they're calling their friends, or they're, outside doing something, playing, like practicing sports or jumping on the trampoline. And I know they've sort of cracked the locks that we've put on their screens when they are nowhere to be found, and I finally find them just kind of mindlessly scrolling in some corner of our house. So it's a constant battle because they're digital natives.
Yeah,
and
they are.
And my daughter tells me it's painful to watch me on my phone, and because she's like, just give me that. So it's hard to keep trying to do that, which is why I'm so adamant that the government needs to do more to help parents out here.
There's a lot of things being said when you were running for office. Do you have a talk with your kids, like, please ignore it, don't look at what they're saying about mom?
I've been in politics since my youngest was 6. And so this has been something my kids, I think, are familiar with, and they're well versed in that. But the level of political violence is something new and very, very scary. That I worry about all the time. I felt like there was a lot I could do to make my children resilient in the face of attacks against me and to kind of keep them out of that and safe. But, when we hear of these attacks on elected officials and their family members and judges and their family members, that I think is really, really scary. And I'm so incredibly worried about my family, and we're working really hard to figure out ways to keep them safe. But I'm also really worried about our country because it, I think, makes a lot of people think twice about running for elected office.
Really? Because of that political violence?
Because of that violence. I mean, most of us don't want to put our families in any danger. I don't want my family to be in any danger. I am not very risk averse for myself. Just given the life I've lived and the challenges I've taken on, I am incredibly risk averse when it comes to my kids.
Yeah, of course. So you mentioned that you started in politics when your youngest was 6. What led to that decision?
So after a lifetime of service, when Donald Trump first got into office, he started attacking a lot of the things that were really red lines for me. And there were a lot of different things, but one of the things I just remember that to me was so unacceptable was he started attacking John McCain. And as a young midshipman, we were taught a lot about the POWs in Vietnam and their service. And John McCain in particular, who had been shot down, he had ejection injuries that went untreated. I think he could never really raise his arms very high by the end of his life. And he was captured, and then he was offered release because he was sort of naval royalty. His dad had been an admiral, his grandfather had an admiral, and the Viet Cong knew that if they released him, it would really be a blow to morale for the other prisoners, for American service members. And he refused that. And imagine that, being a prisoner of war and being given this opportunity to be released, but instead he said no. And so to me, that was real heroism. And to see Donald Trump attacking something that I thought spoke to someone's honor and spoke about what's really good in this nation, and to have him sort of despise it again and again, he just attacked, I think, a lot of the things that I really was offended by. And so I decided I'd run.
So wait, when someone comes to that decision, what are the steps you have to take? Because were you working in private sector at that point?
I had been anticipating going into some criminal justice work, and I'd been speaking to one group about a a job I was intending to take. And I think if someone is raised with a lot of Catholic guilt, someone determines that, there's this, I've always been one to put my money where my mouth is. And I was really concerned about our country and the direction it was going. I knew people in federal office, many of them Republicans given my background in the Navy, but I knew people in federal office that I could reach out to and ask a little bit about that. Because of my time at the U.S. Attorney's Office, I knew people in state politics. And so I started to talk about them. My husband had a good job, so I knew that if I had to not work for the time it would take me to run for office, I could do that. So the more I understood that I could put this campaign together, the more I started to feel like I had a responsibility. And so I, started thinking about it. I was up all night one night, and I went to my husband. I said, Jay, I really think I should run for Congress.
Wow.
And I thought he was going to say, oh my gosh, we have 4 kids. There's no way. But instead he said, yeah, I think you should. And
That's awesome. It's
it
so
was
hard
so
to find strong men.
awesome.
Oh, and thank God we both have that.
But I also
Awesome.
feel a little guilty because I think if the shoe was on the other foot, I would have said, wait a minute, Buster. 4 kids, what are you thinking? But anyway, it was pretty amazing.
You won your first time out. You electrified the town. My sister-in-law, a friend of yours, Stephanie, they were so excited. They went to your fundraising dinners, and I mean, the town really rallied behind you.
It really did. And the thing that I love most about running a campaign like that, where people get engaged, is how many young people get engaged. And I'll tell you, in that 2018 cycle, we saw that. And this cycle since then, I hadn't seen it as much, but we are now seeing that again this summer. So many young people getting involved and getting engaged. And I think that's critically important because, of course, this is their future that we're fighting for, and to have them at the table, to have these discussions, to understand what's important, it's really great to see that. So we're seeing that again this summer. I'm really hopeful that we'll continue to see more and more young people engaged throughout November.
So your first time out, you get a Congress seat. I mean, 2 years ago, you were watching Trump's comments. You decided to make a change, and you were the change. I mean, a very electrifying congressional class you got sworn in with. I mean, what was going through your mind at that? I mean, were you like, what am I doing here?
It is really amazing, I think, for just about everyone who gets into Congress. It's the craziest things, walking up to the Capitol building and thinking, this is my office, and taking your oath, an oath to the Constitution and to serve people. It really is a huge honor. And so it was wonderful. And then, when I went into the Navy in the early 90s, it was largely men. In fact, there were less than 10% of my class at the Naval Academy was made up of women.
Wow.
So you were always proving yourself when I was serving. And then I went to a big law firm, and there were very few women partners. And again, it felt like you were always held to, a different standard and having to prove yourself. And to get into Congress and have such a powerful group, and such a powerful group of women as well, was really a different feeling. And it's been great. It's been pretty amazing to see how that class had such an impact, that class of 2018, and the women in that class have been central to a lot of the impact that people have had.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot written about those women. Dispel some of what's written about them, because I feel like in a lot of ways they do get a bad rep in some medias.
A lot of the things that sometimes we see, I see women that work really well together, and I see that replicated. So I often think that my success is not because I simply went down there and as an individual, I'm like, hi, I'm Mikie Sherrill, I'm from the 11th District of New Jersey, and that's going to have the impact I need it to have if I'm really going to make change. But it was along with myself and Abigail Spanberger, who served in the CIA, Alyssa Slatkin, who served in the CIA, Chrissy Houlihan, who served in the military, Elaine Luria, who also went to the Naval Academy and served in the Navy. So it was this group of women, and we all were on committees of jurisdiction that work together. So whether it was Armed Services, which I sit on, or the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Intelligence Committee, the Strategic Committee for Competition with China, which I sit on as well, but all those other women cover those different committees. We all worked so well together, and that made the impact. And what's interesting to me is I was just talking to Governor Whitmer earlier today, talking about how seeing how the women governors have that same type of group that they work with. There is something about, I think, women leaders who are good at being connected and coming up with the best ideas that are out there, and then using those ideas to create success in their own capacity.
So you're loving life in Washington, you're getting a lot done, but now you turned to being governor of the state. So what inspired you to run for that office?
I am really proud of the work I've done in Washington. In fact, I was told early on that, you know, Mikie, if you're here for about 20 years, you can really make a difference. And I remember thinking, wow, I might not be here in 2 years, right? This is a tough, you know, this at the time was a tough seat and working hard to hold it. So at that time, I got to work, and in only my second term, I was named the most effective member of the New Jersey delegation because of the broad coalitions I was able to build. But Congress has gotten more and more difficult to work, and we've seen less and less get done. And I started to feel that it was governors that were going to be able to truly serve the people of the state very well. And they're pragmatic. You know, the fact that the buck stops with governors. So you've got to get stuff done. You've got to deliver for the people of the state, or you won't be in power very long. And that was really, and is really, attractive to me. I want to be able to deliver for people in New Jersey to the best of my ability. And I think being governor is where that will happen.
We need that help, you know, more than ever.
Right.
In the state, and just the way the world is and how it's changing. How do you keep going? What's your secret to keeping healthy, keeping everything balanced, home life?
So it is a lot to juggle, and I've always made a pact with myself not to gloss over how hard it sometimes can be to juggle all of it, because I know there was nothing kind of more defeating when I was a busy mom, especially a mom of young kids, to have somebody who was very successful kind of act as if they were just really good at everything and nothing went wrong in their life. Like they just balanced it and they made sure their kids had nutritious meals and were always, you know, perfect academically and somehow made it all look effortless. Because I would just think, why?
Yeah,
you're
not telling the truth,
right?
Clearly.
I would think,
No,
what am I
not.
getting wrong here? So
No.
it's a constant balance, right? To make sure that you're pushing in where you need to go. And certainly a campaign like this is almost all-consuming. So trying to make sure that you're making time for the family while at the same time able to take this on is a tough balance.
And still serving Congress.
And still serving in Congress. But I do think this is the most important thing I can do for my kids, is really weigh in on the future of New Jersey. This is an amazing state. I mean, I started yesterday with a great church service with a Reverend Wilson, who just really gave such an impactful statement on the state of things. And then and then later in the day, I was out at the state fair in Sussex County. I milked a cow.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I actually said to somebody, well, you know, my ancestors were farmers, and they look at me and they go, weren't everybody? So they weren't that impressed, but I did that, which was awesome. And then later on went to SummerSlam, which was amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. I had not been to an event in person like that, and that was truly wonderful. And I was just saying to the people who were putting that event on, you know, it was 2 nights in the Meadowlands. Somebody said, oh, is that at, you know, The Rock or something? No, it was in the Meadowlands.
Oh, yeah.
There aren't many places where I think you can really draw 2 nights of a crowd that large and put on events like that, we're really lucky to be in the center of it all. This state is truly in the center of everything, in my humble opinion.
Oh, absolutely. It's where it's at.
It's where it's at. And so, you know, day after day, weekend after weekend, I see more and more of the amazing things that this state offers. And so it's been fun.
30-second rapid fire. Favorite Jersey. Okay. Favorite Jersey food.
Oh my gosh, there are so many, but I'm going to have to go with an old standby pizza.
Okay. Where's your
we,
pizza,
we
please?
just have. I love Star Tavern.
Oh, of course.
It's so good.
Favorite Jersey celebrity.
Oh, I love Chris Geddard. He is so good. He is in documentaries. He also did this podcast, Jersey is the World. He's a comic, and then of course, you know, I mean, Meryl Streep, I guess you almost have to say, because
of course,
how awesome.
There's so many to choose from. You can't go wrong. Can't go wrong. Finally, favorite shore town.
Oh, so I love Asbury Park, but my daughter has started surfing and is loving Belmar. So maybe I'll branch out a little bit.
All right, awesome. Well, Mikie, this was so much fun. It was a pleasure getting to know you and the woman behind this amazing campaign.
Thanks for doing this.
And we will see you at the debate on September 21st at Rider University. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks again for doing this.
Thanks. Through her military service, her time in Congress, and her love of New Jersey, Mikie Sherrill's journey reflects both dedication and connection to the people she hopes to lead. Our conversation gave us the chance to see her not just as a candidate, but as a wife and mother looking to make a difference. Thank you for watching Your New Jersey. I'm Lisa Marie Falbo. We'll see you back here next week.